Matt is angry.
I'm not angry. I'm contemplative.
No, this is a really, I think, an important topic, actually.
Yes.
It's far too complicated, Matt.
Yeah. Is World of Warcraft too complicated?
Yes.
For the vast majority of players, and arguably for the developers, World of Warcraft is substantially too complicated. It is
interesting.
It is an approachability problem for players. It forces players who... Okay, this is being very presumptive of me. It forces players into a playstyle that they may not entirely enjoy in the long term, because it's maybe replace something else. But game's too complicated. Not to say too hard. That's a slightly different topic. Same thereabouts, but it is too complicated.
Yeah, interesting. So there's some of the inspirations here. I was not aware of this. Backlash to Dratos and Tettle's tier lists. Mm-hmm. Is that just a lot of people being like, hey, this is going too fucking far. Fuck off with your tier lists. This is a fantasy game. Go away. Is that like the feel people are getting?
No. The backlash
what's the deal with this?
So the backlash to the tier list is fundamentally stuff where it's like, this is too much for Dratos and Tettles to really completely understand everything and distill everything and explain everything really, really concisely.
So is it people feeling that the tier list wasn't accurate because there was so much complexity that you can't really give a good answer? Yeah,
there's some of that. And I mean, it's like, I'm looking at it, it's not to say, Dratos and Tettles shouldn't have been on top of everything, because you look at like what a product value is and stuff like that, and et cetera, but it's just like another thing that, it was also the double legendaries, because I was interested in what I was going to play this patch, and I was looking at the double legendaries for everything, and it just hit me one day. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why do these class writers have to write paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph about how these interactions work for every covenant and every double legendary? Why? For me, trying to understand what I should play was like, it wasn't extremely difficult. It wasn't like, oh, well, this is too beyond me. Only giant brains, 500 IQ can understand this game. It was like, no, the recommendations are this does this because this. But the sheer amount of effort they had to go to boil it down, and that was just one thing. That was just the double legendaries. That's not considering all of the talent builds, because obviously it found out that Elemental Shaman with Night Fae and the tier 4 set can have 100% uptime on Storm Elemental, which means that so Storm Elemental with the Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning cast reduce the cast time of them so you basically stack up to extremely fast Lightning Bolt casts. If you refresh Storm Elemental before it drops off, the stack duration refreshes, but not the number of stacks. So you're basically Lightning Bolt Machine Gun, 100% uptime. And that's just a thing people had to sort of figure out. And that's the stuff that sounds really, really cool in terms of like a PoE build situation. But World of Warcraft's an MMO with all of the metagaming that's necessitated for community play. And all of that like complication, all of the convolution involved just had me thinking, who is this game made for? Because it sure as hell isn't me.
It's made for PoE players.
And it sure as hell isn't most people I've played World of Warcraft in my time.
It's made for PoE players. And surely when you look at Mythic Plus and the way that they've designed these systems, it's made for people like PoE, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what the designers like, and they certainly took all those Diablo inspirations at a point.
Yeah.
It makes me think it's definitely not where I want the game to go, but it doesn't really seem like they are sort of designing from first principles, kind of like with an eye to making an MMO. It seems like they're a little bit lost in the woods, but just taking inspirations from how like ARPGs do shit, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It's like it has all got just silly complex. I suppose that's the thing. It's a lot cheaper to innovate in systems and to, chop and change systems, right? It's, like, I don't know, do they get inspired by PoE, seasons?
PoE leagues, yeah, probably. Well, I mean, that's the thing. If they get inspired by them, they certainly don't show it all that well in terms of the execution. The entire M plus affixes thing feels like something PoE would have done one season, called shit, and moved on.
Yeah. I suppose just that thing. I mean, I generally take I take the opinion that whenever you have to resort to a timer to get your difficulty, that's just a bit lazy.
Yeah,
but I think they ultimately do just want this to be the sort of infinitely replayable thing. Yeah, so anyway, thinking about how to approach Mythic Plus as an average player. Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. It's Mythic Plus is designed for Mythic Plusers. It's not designed for average MMO players.
Yeah, but it's a pillar of gameplay. A pillar of in-game gameplay.
Yeah, but they've
Yeah.
they've basically carved it up into like these sort of gameplay niches. And for me, I mean, yeah, raid's just the thing that I'd be interested in Mythic Plus. I don't have any extended interest in, just because the timer just makes all the dungeons feel the same. It's like just sort of doing the same thing with different tactics.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
I think it also homogenizes
it definitely
like what a dungeon is, because it now has to be designed within this competitive format.
Yeah, which is already showing issues with Tazavesh, because Tazavesh, they definitely designed that knowing that it was going to be an M+, but they didn't care it was going to be an M+. So a lot of the minigames, a lot of the RP was throwing people a lot of problems this week.
Interesting.
Imagine they'll iron them all out, so Mythic Plus people will be happy enough. But yeah, and I think Mythic Plus is like, it's the complexity is also in the gameplay that makes it kind of fun in there, because I guess there's multiple forms of complexity. There's one that my character, what does my character do, and rotations are simple. They're very simple. They're almost abysmally simple in a lot of cases, but everything that feeds into that couple of buttons is quite complicated in terms of your legendaries, your soulbinds, your conduits, a bunch of passives, other stuff like that. And that's the complexity. That's kind of the stuff for strategists and class writers that they love sitting down and going, oh, how's this going to work? Blah, 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 blah. I think that's perfectly fine. Maybe that complexity is way too much for the average player, and they reduce it to metagaming because, yep, here's some real world knowledge. I can't remember when it happened or what it was, but it was called it was a experiment about choice and pasta jars in supermarkets where
Whoa.
Yeah, so I'll have to look this up later, but they're basically too much choice overwhelms people. You go into a supermarket and the experiment was something like, here's a load of different like slight variations of flavors on pasta sauce flavors, and above a certain amount of choices people didn't choose, took longer to choose, or felt frustrated and left, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was reduced to a small handful of choices, people went, I'll take them. And that's kind of the thing we have with all of this gameplay systems.
Totally.
Yeah, where it's like, Covenants is a choice, fine. That's fine. Covenants and Legendaries is a choice. That's, you're now kind of exponentially adding stuff. You're exponentially adding you're going, talents to the power of 4 in terms of consideration for Covenants. Then you add soulbinds and conduits. And now you've got this extremely complicated game. Like utterly extremely complicated of like people just simcraft stuff. I mean, they always did with gear, but now it's the only way to understand what's happening.
Yeah, and now with double Legos across 4 Covenants for every single spec. Yeah. It's like, 36 specs in the game? So you got 36 times 4, and then whatever the double Lego. I mean, oh my god. How the hell do you balance that? How do you get your head around that as a designer? It must be really hard.
Yeah, so I think that that is a bad experience for players. It's a good experience for some players who like thinking about that and like having options. Like, what's it called? Enhancement Shaman currently has 3 substantial build choices. One around Necrolord, one around Nightfey, one around, I think it's... I can't remember if it's Venthyr. I think it's Kyrian. I can't remember. I was looking this up a little bit earlier. And I think that's cool. But that's like accidental because of how all this stuff... Maybe it's on purpose, but it's really awkwardly done. It's like through tweaking 5,000 different things. And I think that's too complex. But then there's Mythic Plus complexity as well, which is, how do you approach a Mythic Plus dungeon? Look up a route.
Dungeon tools?
You look up a route with Method Dungeon Tools. Is it still Method Dungeon Tools or was it split off?
It's just called Dungeon Tools.
Oh, yeah, Dungeon Tools. Yeah, so Dungeon Tools, there you go. Because someone else has to do all the complex thinking because this is so intense. Because it's so hard to optimize, but you want to optimize because performance optimization is how the entire game is built.
Because of the timer?
Yeah, and it's not like the timer's like... Because I see Pupper Doggo is usually pretty good at calling me out for shit that I say that's just not very experienced or not correct.
I think that saying the timer's for casual, I think that's insane.
Yeah, like Pupper Doggo said, the timer creates a difficulty that a bad player can ignore. You can tell yourself you're as good as the max or whatever if you only care to make time. You can't, though. I disagree because that's like, maybe I don't disagree. That's true, but because you can't ignore the timer, but the timer's there. You're not going to ignore the timer. The timer is there. You don't just ignore things.
That's not. Yeah, that's just. Like, that's just legit not how it works.
Yeah, that's an excuse that Blizzard is. It's fine. This is optional, but that's not how players will experience that because tanks. I mean, because you want to look at real world output. Tanks in Mythic Plus. Where are they? I can't find any. None exist. No one wants the tank. Tanks are probably at their like worst population. Maybe it's a little bit different recently, but throughout the past couple expansions, I found tanks are a lot rare.
I would never start tanking in the third season of a WoW expansion because I'd have to learn every route for every dungeon and all the things. Whereas at least in a DPS, whereas for a DPS, I just follow the people and kill the things.
Yeah.
I mean, the time where I enjoyed dungeons the most was the launch of Cataclysm and those heroics, where they were hard and we die a bunch, and it's like, all right, I died, I have to do better next time, and you don't feel like you're going to be punished by having your key depleted, meaning you've got to go and do that dungeon again, lower difficulty, just to get back to where you were, which I think is one of the worst feeling things that's ever been put in a game. And I think that's just like so silly. I mean, just the whole idea of key depletion, that should just be manual if people want less, but they shouldn't deplete a key whenever you lose because you've lost. Like, you didn't complete the dungeon in time. Well, that's your punishment. No need to stab someone in the dick once they're on the ground. Like,
and here's this is the kind of thought that came out of nowhere. So there's generally, as far as I'm aware, in World of Warcraft's history, there's been cases of players saying they want one thing, Blizzard following along, and then players not really engaging with that very much. And then Blizzard going, well, no, we can't give you what you want because you don't want it. You've only said you wanted it. And I think people make that a lot with...
It does happen in games.
Yeah, that absolutely. People make that with the Cata heroics. Like, it was too hard. People didn't do that much. You're just, you're rose-tinted goggles or whatever else, or you're a minority. That's
most engaged I've ever been in a WoW dungeon. Loved it. But yeah.
Yeah, but maybe, people who are more casual or weren't as willing to devote time that time were more like, I like the idea, but not the game. Not playing it. Here's the thing. And this is very personal because this is how I feel an awful lot about character action games. I love the idea of playing them more than I love playing them because I'm too much of a modern goopy-brained gamer to sit and play Devil May Cry 5 for 80 hours to feel as exceptional, but the possibilities there. I always know I have that disc sitting there. I could fire that in. I can have a whale of a time doing stuff that I'm never going to do because I'm just... The aspiration's there, but the will isn't. And I think that's the same for this stuff. People liking the idea of your game is more important than them liking playing your game because the idea is more important than their continued engagement than actually playing it. Whoa. At least, I'm saying that as a statement of fact. What it really is a personal perspective based on I was about to say damn near 30 years of playing video game. I'm not that old just yet. 25, 24 years of playing video games. And I think that's one thing that people need to keep in mind when they're thinking about this, like, people are wrong. They play loads of Mythic Plus and they like the timer, otherwise they wouldn't play. It's like, people play because people would rather have a game they want to play and don't than a game they play and don't want to play, I think. And that's where that's where the complexity comes in. Because you look at what it called, you look at, again, to go back to tanks, you look at tanks and you're like, no one's playing tank because it's an awful experience. It's a nightmare. People love the fantasy of tanking, but they don't want to actually tank because learning Mythic Plus is way too complicated. Yeah, there's so many routes you have to learn, and people are toxic as hell towards tanks for not knowing routes because everyone's performance optimized.
Because of the timer and
because
the
of the timer, yeah.
And that's the thing with Blizz. They always it's like the soft skills that they mess up, I suppose. Yeah. It's the human element that they don't anticipate.
Precisely.
So I guess when you say when is depth an approachability issue, that's absolutely
That's fundamentally that.
yeah tanxiety.
Yep.
I'm never tanking an M+.
Yeah.
I mean, I will at the start of an expansion, but
Yeah, laugh at anxiety if you want, but it happens. It's true. It's real.
yeah. And it would never really happen in a really hard kata-style heroic. Or, if there was just mythic and super mythic, but no timer, because all that matters is, did you beat the boss or not?
Well, it might, but for a different reason.
For a different reason, and I think a reason that's a lot more approachable.
Yeah, which is, that seems too hard for me. Not, I want to do that because I think I can, but I don't want to bother learning it all.
Yeah.
That's a big thing in fighting games as well, where it's like, I'm pretty sure I have the skill, that'd be really cool, but that takes a lot of time to grind out, game knowledge.
So, how do we combine or segregate performance-oriented and non-performance-oriented players? So in a single-player game, that already happens.
Indeed, yep.
You choose, do you want to do the John Madden, the crazy playstyle in Elden Ring, or do you want to just, go sword and board? Just being that sort of dynamic difficulty in Dark Souls or Souls-like games is just being a thing.
Yeah, it's exceptional because even I've had a recent experience there where I've been like, I'm going to play this I'm going to play this Elden Ring like the perfect vision of me from the past played Dark Souls, which is, keeping a low soul level, no health, dual wielding a great sword, going around, just dodge rolling through everything. Oh wait, Elden Ring's designed for a lot more choice in my build, so I'm going to engage with the game mechanics and be really strong as a character instead of being a dumbass. And that's me actively going, I haven't liked the increase in difficulty in Souls games as they've got more complex after 1 and 2. 3, Bloodborne and Elden Ring have a lot more aggressive enemies. Their enemy tracking is way, way stronger on attack, so you can't do as much neat sidestepping anymore. Basically, it's gotten harder. I haven't enjoyed that super much experientially, so I've opted to tune the difficulty down through being a bit more non-performance oriented for a change.
Yeah, but it all works. Single player game.
Yep.
Yeah. With multiplayer, though, that happens because of different types of content. Great gameplay that works for non-performance oriented players and performance oriented players.
Yeah, that's hard.
Multiple forms of gameplay that work for each. And to have dungeons accomplish all that's just really challenging. While also having it work with the reward systems and incentives of actually going into those dungeons in the first place. Challenge.
Indeed. Yep. Indeed.
Challenge, I mean, in many ways, Mythic Plus has probably saved a part of WoW, because ultimately people in the past didn't run dungeons. It became irrelevant. Yeah,
it's interesting content for people to do. So in that regard, it has been absolutely a success. I think it is a success that has masked a substantial amount of other failure, because you've got all your performance-oriented players are happy enough doing it, but all your non-performance-oriented players are going through the motions of it and maybe not super engaged, and you've also went, engagement up. Don't need to make more content.
Yeah, so I don't really know what the solution is here. But certainly there's I like to think about, shared truths and stuff and shared aspirations. And I think my line is when we were having a conversation earlier, the whole World of Warcraft should be rock hard. Yeah. How much of that is a big shared lie, a big shared delusion? Because we obviously want there to be, hard content there, but do we think about fun as much? It's
clearly not.
Yeah, sometimes, it's like we praise difficulty, we praise get good, we praise all of that so much that sometimes it's like, okay, well, I can get how, let's create interesting problems for our players to solve. If that's your North Star, you're going to make a very hard game. And often they do that in WoW. Yeah. But what about fun? What about trying to make the most fun boss mechanic, and that's your North Star, instead of the most interesting challenge to overcome for a group of people playing it like that's a team sport? Yeah. And, maybe you come to different conclusions, different sorts of content. And I think when we kind of go to the is WoW too complicated, see where some of that comes in. We look at FF, sometimes it has these more simple boss fights, but the spectacles there, there's this crazy level of fun that's there because of the spectacle and just because of where they've decided to put their points into.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's fundamentally it.
Yeah.
Make them fun, not hard. There's an overlap between fun and hard, but I don't think...
Painsmith gets to be that overlap because it's such a visceral fight.
Yeah.
It's such a visceral fight. The mechanics work really well. It's just it's one of those fights that really clicks super well. I actually think that Zymox is another really good example of that. And you'll definitely see with me, there'll be fights with big spectacle and big group movement all I generally like them more. I know not all people are like that.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe for the average player, those are the most fun because they just have that level of like they're visceral. The level of fantasy is really strong.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the more that a fight gets weak or easy, the kind of less I'm in on it.
Yeah, although that's more likely going to be the fight that's remembered as good or fun because the discourse is largely controlled by the players that they've catered to the most for the longest time, which is just a kind of unfortunate way it's kind of gone, where, you know, thinking about the average player having some fun would probably be a good change of pace, because I don't know if it happens super well, but it definitely happens sometimes, because I said this for last week for Zerath Mortis. I don't know whoever designed the resonant peaks, but good job. You're definitely onto something. I wish it wasn't gated by the ciphers, or rather, I like how it's gated by the ciphers. I wish the ciphers weren't gated the way they were.
Yeah, that's maybe more fair.
So they know how to make things fun. They know how to make things novel. Zerath Mortis Questing's proved that. Some of the encounters they made prove that. They just need to, I think, move a little bit towards fun. What is fun? And you're like, what is fun? That's hard to make fun.
I think about like some of the bosses I really enjoyed. Like I thought Grimrail Depot was great. I thought Auchindoun.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really great dungeon.
Grimrail.
I guess I think about some of those. It's like Grimrail. It's like that's a novel thing. I think about Auchindoun, and it's like, well, those are like simple bosses with clear mechanics that are quite satisfying.
Yeah.
I think of Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. I actually just think WoD had brilliant dungeons.
WoD's dungeons were the best. They're not the best, but they're extremely good. Yeah.
I'd love to see WoD Mythic Plus.
Mists are really good as well.
I mean, okay, I say WoD Mythic Plus as in I'd love to do WoD dungeons like.
You want to see the modern. You want to do them. You want to do them while they're relevant now.
Yeah.
You want them to be made. You know,
you would so good.
Yeah, you would like to do WoD dungeons the way you would go and do a Shadowbringers dungeon now.
Remember patch 6.2.3?
No, because
that's when they added mythic dungeons for the first time.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
All
Holy
the WoD
shit,
dungeons were there in mythic mode. It was great.
That was especially because you needed to finish them in mythic for the legendary ring, didn't you? Or was that to work?
No, the mythic.
Then did I just do a whole bunch of mythic dungeons for no reason?
The mythic dungeons came in after the expansion was done.
Oh shit, yeah.
That was that incredible patch. I think it brought mythic dungeons and it brought time walking. It was like amazing.
Huh.
Yeah, for a systems patch, it was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember doing so many WoD dungeons, and I remember getting annoyed at Iron Dock because it's very big, and I remember getting annoyed at Grimrail because hallway camera. But
okay, fair, yeah.
Otherwise, I think WoD dungeons were incredible. I definitely didn't like all the skips in the Evergrowth.
Fair.
But yeah, though they were great.